480 Marines were left behind trapped, wounded, and written off as casualties. Command said the mission was over, but Sergeant Alina Torres saw through her scope what no one else wanted to admit. They were still alive. When orders told her to stand down, she chose to disobey. Alone on a ridge, she called in an unauthorized drone strike and held position for 36 hours until every last Marine was saved. What she did broke protocol and rewrote military history. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? They said it was a clean sweep, that the valley was secured, that all the recon units had been pulled back before the storm hit. But Sergeant Alina Torres knew better, because she still had eyes on thermal, still counted heat signatures moving in clusters deep in the canyon floor, still heard static-filled radio calls begging for extraction before they cut out. And when she tried to report it, the command center shut her down, said it was a glitch, said she was reading old heat trails from earlier units, said to stand down and relocate to her next overwatch point, because the brass had already declared Operation Cinderbolt a success. But Alina couldn't erase the sound of that last transmission, couldn't forget the way Corporal Vega's voice cracked when he whispered, "They're leaving us. We're still here," before the line went dead. So while her spotter packed their gear and the helos dusted off toward the next sector, Torres stayed prone on that jagged outcrop above Echo Ravine, sand biting her cheeks, the sun boiling the air through her scope, heart pounding with a sick knowing that 480 Marines were somewhere down there without air support, without eyes, and without orders to be saved because command had already signed off on their deaths, to avoid political fallout from a mission that had gone off script and into war. They weren't supposed to be fighting, but Torres didn't care about politics. She cared about the young men she'd trained beside, the boots she'd patched with duct tape in rain-drenched barracks, the dog-eared letters from their moms they'd all laughed over in the chow tent. And she knew damn well protocol wasn't going to bring them home, so she broke it hard, dialing her long-range SATCOM to bypass secure channels and beam a burst message straight to an old friend in Blackbird Command, who owed her a favor from Cobble. And while she waited for a ping back, she shifted her scope, marked the coordinates of every muzzle flash and heat plume moving against the dirt, memorizing patterns with the obsession of someone who refused to let ghosts die unseen. And when command caught wind of her rogue signal, they screamed in her ear, threatened her rank, her future, her freedom, but she pulled the earpiece out and smashed it under her boot. Because she didn't have time for cowards playing chess with real men's lives. And just as dusk dropped like a curtain, her SATCOM pinged back. 1 drone, 3 Hellfires, ETA 7 minute, make them count, and that was all she needed. Because she knew exactly where to place each shot, knew where the ridge opened into the kill zone, where the cartel-backed marks had set their ambush line, where the Marines had holed up in a dry creek bed like sitting ducks and, with shaking fingers, she input the coordinates, confirmed payloads, and painted the targets with her own scope while tears stung her eyes not from fear, but rage. The kind of rage only a soldier knows when she's told to leave family behind. And when the Reaper sliced overhead in the black sky, She watched fire rain down like justice, like wrath, like an apology she refused to let come too late, and then, against every expectation, a flare bloomed from the ravine, red, then green, then red again, an old-school code, alive, wounded, holding, and she sobbed into the dirt, clutching her rifle like a lifeline, because they were still there, still breathing, still fighting, and she didn't move from that outcrop for 36 hours. Not until the evac birds finally dropped in under cover of night and lifted out every last survivor from Echo Ravine. Not until every single Marine who'd been left for dead had boots back on solid ground. And when the chopper finally came for her, she didn't climb in smiling or proud. She climbed in broken, spent, covered in dust and guilt and fury, and at the debriefing, when the general slammed his fist and accused her of violating protocol, she stood silent until he said the words insubordination and court-martial, and then she opened the USB she'd carried in her breast pocket, handed it to the lead investigator, and said, "Play the thermal footage, watch them crawl, bleed, call for help, and then tell me again about your precious protocol." And when they played it, no one spoke, no one blinked, and no one dared look her in the eye, because the footage didn't just show the Marines fighting. It showed the enemy executing the wounded, showed the men Torres had saved being minutes from death, and showed her laser pointer guiding the missiles that ended it. And that was enough for the tribunal to drop all charges. But it wasn't enough for her, not yet, because even though she'd saved them, she couldn't forget how easily they'd been abandoned, how disposable their lives had been on some spreadsheet hundreds of miles away. And so she left the cause to months later, didn't wait for medals or commendations, didn't want a folded flag or citation from a man in a suit who'd never been shot at. She just packed her rifle, her scope, and her silence, and disappeared into the desert. But the Marines she saved didn't forget. Not one of them, and every year on the date she called in that drone, they sent her a coin engraved with Echo Ravine lives. No rank, no name, just the words that mattered, and in bars from Quantico to Pendleton. Her legend grew, not because she disobeyed an order, but because she rewrote what honor meant that day, not blind obedience, but knowing when to say no, when to act, when to save those who'd been left behind, and long after she was gone. Her story traveled in whispers, in toasts, in firelit reunions where Marines clutched scars and laughed through tears. Because they were alive, because of her, because one woman saw them, heard them, and refused to let them become a footnote, and in the end, that's what made her unforgettable, not just her aim, but her heart, locked on target even when the world looked away.